What's up, guys? Welcome back to another GOATA video. This one we're going to be discussing the spiral mechanisms within GOATA. If you've heard about GOATA before, which we're going to assume that you have, you know that we talk about spirals, especially in the context of nature. But I know that there's a lot of questions because it took me a long time to understand this concept. So I hope this video answers some of those questions. So first things first, we're going to start off with identifying spirals within nature itself. So I've got these pictures right here of a fingerprint, a sunflower, tree trunk, a galaxy, I don't know, a seashell or something, and then a hurricane. And I can't draw on this app right now, but hopefully you guys can see the spirals going on here, right? More importantly, counterclockwise as well, especially the hurricane. But two things to really identify here, and that will later get on into human movement, because you probably look at these spirals are obvious. It's not very obvious in human movement. So the two main factors within these pictures is that there's a middle, or what we would call pivot point, right? The centerpiece, whatever it is, it's the middle, and then the spirals are what's revolving around that, right? So let's go over here. This is just right on the Google page, and I thought it was great because there's some keywords in here that I want to go over that apply great to GOATA. So I already went over this first part. The reason why plants use a spiral form is because they are constantly trying to grow but stay secure. Secure is a key word because we talk about having a movement pattern, right, within, or more really just having a GOATA pattern, movement pattern, which is secure, right? And then down at the bottom, it is argued that these spirals are so common in biological organisms because it is the most efficient way for something to grow. And by maintaining the same shape through each successive turn of the spiral, it is argued the least amount of energy needs to be used, which I couldn't agree 100% more. So the most efficient way for something to grow. Plants grow by the means of energy, right? So I think it's fair to say that plants use spirals to maximize their ability to obtain energy and also maximize their ability to use that energy. And it's the same thing with human movement, right? Our bodies want to maximize its energy input and output so that it's efficient. And then this last part, the least amount of energy needs to be used when moving this way. That's exactly what we want and what makes spirals so great. So let's get on to some videos, right? Where do we see spirals? And I'm going to start off with a WOTA. So let's just I just want to identify, so for a spiral, we need a pivot point, and we need, whatever rotates or revolves around that pivot point, right? So as far as GOATA and WOTA goes, there's really two ways that our body can do spirals or rotate in movement. So there's the right way and the wrong way, obviously, and GOATAs and WOTAs are totally different. So there's two ways that we can spiral, and there's two different pivot points that we can have, right? We can pivot off of our inside edge of the foot or on the outside edge. So if you know WOTAs, their pivot point is going to be on the inside edge. So we're looking at this right leg. So a plant, right, his inside ankle bone low, we know the pressure is on that inside edge. So that's going to be his pivot point. There it is. Now all we need to do from this point, because he's loaded all the pressure into this leg, is ask ourselves where that knee is pointing. And if you can see, it's pointing in. And then I should probably zoom in. That's as much. As he releases, right, comes off that pivot point, the knee then releases and now it's pointing outward. So there's the revolving mechanics of that, right? So his foot's the pivot point, and then the knee starting from in, to out, is spiraling like this, if that makes sense, right? It's not going to do a full 360 kind of spiral, but the foot's the middle piece, pivot point, and then that knee goes from in to out, and that's going to be the spiraling mechanism. So if you notice, that's clockwise. Now let's look at Tom Brady, because this dude's a beast. GOATA. So for him, let's get a closer one of him running. Maybe this right one. So we'll look at another one too to make it real clear, but he's on the outside edge of his foot. He's got a nice bow set. Whoops, I thought I was drawing right there. Boom. So he's loaded all the pressure into this leg right here. So I know it's a little bit hard to tell, but because of the shape of his leg being that bow, we know the knee is pointing out. So it's starting outwards instead of inwards. And then we go frames. Whoops, man, dude, that dude is fast. When he corners, that knee went from out to now in. Maybe we can see it better on this right leg. So the knee's out here. Skip a couple frames. Woo, man, that's fast. And then I can't even really see the knee. It's pointing in. So if you were to draw the spiral, right, it'd be counterclockwise, right? The knee goes from out to in, while the foot's the pivot point. Great, perfect. Now here's him, just a little throw. So he's actually loading his right leg because his left leg's totally off the ground. So he sets a small bow. Foot's the pivot point, right? That knee, let me go back just a little bit. Because it's so subtle right there. So his knee is like pointing right in this direction. Then as he fully loads that leg and sets his bow, you see that knee open up just a little bit, right? So now it's kind of pointing out a little bit more. So again, it's the knee starting outwards, and then it's going to spiral in, right, as it releases this energy. So then he makes the throw. The knee's obviously pointing in, right foot's pointing away. There's that pivot point, perfect. And then we just know that the energy is going like counterclockwise, or maybe it'd be better to do this, because you've got the pivot point of the foot, and then it's just spiraling. Perfect. So hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer. Honestly, a concept like this really just one day clicked for me. I wish I knew what video or, whatever it was I was looking at that made it click. But I've got one last example of the hammer throw, which is an Olympic sport. I think this is probably one of the best examples you can get about spirals and why we want to move. And we do move in such a way, but we want to move correctly, right? We want to go the right direction because that's going to be the safest for us and for our joints, connective tissue, all the good stuff. But another important aspect of the spiral mechanism is that, with that pivot point being the correct pivot point, you can muster a lot of energy and force. And so that's where it really becomes important in athletic performance, is you're literally getting the most bang for your buck, right? You can put in the least amount of energy and get the max return output. And I think this sport right here perfectly sums it up, because if you've ever seen the hammer throw, actually, let me just play it. Hopefully the volume isn't on, but if you've never seen it, you literally just spin around in a spiral to throw this thing so far. So while he's doing this, I want to point out that if you were to throw this, or even just the shot put event, there's still a little bit of winding up, right? There's a little bit of a spiral because that's just how you get momentum, right? So our bodies move we want to generate momentum, really. So you could not throw a shot put nearly that far, right? Because there's just no way you can muster that. But when you get yourself moving in spirals, it's super powerful and it just unleashes so much energy. So his pivot point is going to be this left foot. Hopefully that circle is big enough because we're going to go through it. So just look at the foot. That's all, that's what the pivot point is, right? And something that's interesting is his body's moving counterclockwise, and even though his heel touches the ground, he still is on the outside edge of his foot, as you can see right there, as he's on his heel. Then he's on the balls of his feet, which is great, and then the outside edge. So he stays on his outside edge, which is the correct pivot point. So this guy, he won the gold medal here. So clearly he knows what he's doing, right? He knows the correct pivot point. But obviously you can tell with the hammer that he's throwing, right? It's just making these spirals as he moves around that pivot point and just unleashes so much power. It's crazy. So I hope that answers some questions. I know spirals is kind of a confusing topic because we want to think of ourselves as literally moving like a hurricane, I guess. I don't know. But it's not so much about moving, like our bodies looking like that. It's more about how our bodies are moving energy, right? What we are doing to move and propel ourselves forward through space and time. And so by doing it properly, we know that we can move securely, right? It's the most efficient way to move. It takes the least amount of energy. I mean, you see it in nature. You see it in sports. The greatest of greats do it. So why would we be any different, right? Why wouldn't we want to move like that? So that's all I have to say about it. If there's any other questions, I've got plenty of deeper topics about this, I guess, that I could go into. So just let me know, drop them down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.